Mr. Doggett is recognized.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Commissioner, for the efforts that you and your team have made to address many of the problems that have been created over the last decade prior to the last Congress by those who seemed intent on ensuring that IRS would fail by cutting the budget again and again and continually attacking and stirring public dissatisfaction with the IRS. As I understand your testimony, we've gone from a low of 15% satisfaction to 85% satisfaction. Is that right?
That's correct.
I remember having not only complaints from constituents before we provided these funds, but even from CPAs and tax preparers that had a special line that were kept holding in the very way you said they are not today. And you could not have had these successes, and your team could not have had these successes without the additional funding you were provided by the last Congress. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Of course, the other area that's very important to me is enforcing our tax laws so that the many people that are out there that are paying their fair share are not abused by those who refuse to do so. And the data that I've seen suggest that audit rates for large corporations in the decade prior to the last Congress were cut in half, and that the audit rates for those who earned over $1 million per year were cut by about 70%. That the top 1% was getting away with not paying an estimated $160 billion in taxes each year. I know that you reported progress being made on tax enforcement earlier this year and a significant increase in revenue as a result. Were the people that you were after, were they the kind we hear about in some of these campaign speeches that, you know, just had honest mistakes and left a little off their return, or were they true tax cheats? And can you give us some examples?
Yeah, I can't emphasize this enough, Congressman. Our focus, our priority, and our agenda under the Inflation Reduction Act is to increase scrutiny for complex filers, wealthy individuals, large corporations, and complex partnerships that are evading their tax responsibility. It is not our intent to increase scrutiny and invest this money on a new wave of audits for middle and low income. That's not going to happen under my watch. And we will be able to publicly report that so that you can hold me accountable for that. With respect to high wealth, there's a lot of different things we're doing to start to catch up and close the gap that's been there for too many years. And one of the things that we can report immediate results on, because often these enforcement actions take time, but there are some things we're doing that should give the American people confidence that we are using this money smartly and in a way that's creating fairness, and that is going after millionaires and billionaires who are delinquent on owed taxes. And this should frustrate people. These are millionaires and billionaires who have been assessed a tax due and are delinquent in paying it. And we have so many honest Americans who pay their taxes on time, and these millionaires and billionaires are not. So we have created this high-risk list of 1,600 of these individuals, and we've started to go get the money back. And so far, in the early stages of this effort, we've already collected $500 million. And that's just scratching the surface. So that should give you a sense of how much inequity there is and how much, if we stay on this path, we're going to be able to close that inequity gap.
And if I understand, to stay on this path, you've indicated that you need about another $800 million this year.
Yes, and that is an important point about our budget. And I'll just, if I could just say it briefly, we have a base budget to fund our ongoing operations, keep the lights on, and then we have the Inflation Reduction Act, which is modernizing and helping us build capacities. Our base budget is insufficient to run the daily train schedules. And what that means is we have to borrow from the modernization fund just to keep the lights on. And if we keep doing that, we won't modernize. We'll keep the lights on, but we won't build these capacities that are so important to help taxpayers.
And I believe the Treasury, just within the last 2 weeks, has estimated that as much as $561 billion could be collected over the next decade from wealthy and corporate tax cheats that you're focused on. And yet, unfortunately, our Republican colleagues on this committee and elsewhere seem to have no higher priority, as indicated by the first bill they passed in this Congress, and their efforts at every time we get up to the brink of disaster here, that they want to cut the very funding you're relying on to see that these corporate and high wealth tax cheats are treated the same way and pay their taxes the way most Americans do. I just want to thank you for your efforts, and we will do all we can to resist the efforts to undermine the progress that you're making.
Mr. Smith is recognized.